Dontavian Wicks is the wide receiver that you want from the Green Bay Packers on your Dynasty roster. We'll explain why on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. On today's show, we're doing some take your pick ahead of week 5. We're going to look at a couple of situations across the NFL, and we're going to make you pick a player that you like out of this bunch. And let's start in Green Bay, Kate. And I'm going to concede something before we get started. Jayden Reed is the number one receiver on this Packers team. I know this is a crazy take. I was wrong before. But as of right now, that's the receiver you want. So we're not debating about Jayden Reed. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just glad that we're finally admitting it. We're at the acceptance stage of the grief process here. Because for anybody new to the show, we've had this debate before. We've had this debate maybe twice before. And every time I have firmly been in the camp of Jayden Reed, wide receiver 1. Marcus has been in any other camp but Jayden Reed. So to hear
like Jayden Reed, though. Like, I was a big fan of Jayden Reed at Michigan State. So I'm just
that's fine, but you weren't a big fan of Jayden Reed being the wide receiver 1 in this team that he was clearly the wide receiver 1 of. So to hear you admit it, it warms my heart. So thank you so much for that heartfelt apology. Out of this bunch, though, since there's a clear-cut Jayden Reed tear break here, I'm going to go with Dontavian Wicks here. And it shouldn't be any surprise because I've been kind of a big skeptic of Christian Watson for a long time. Let's start at Christian Watson. So the case against Christian Watson for me has always been coming out of college, like big men run fast. Like he's like this athlete, right? And like that's what he was. He wasn't a polished wide receiver coming out of college. He was an athlete who had all the physical traits that you would want in a big-bodied outside receiver who is going to use that athleticism to, win. Like, he hasn't developed that, I think, like, nuance of the wide receiver position, though, right? He's still this big man who's a great athlete, but in terms of, like, developing significantly as a route runner and all that, I don't even know if he's like had enough time on the field to really fully embrace that development too. But like, he's just not on the field enough too. Like there's a lot that I'm hesitant about when it comes to Christian Watson.
Yeah. Christian Watson has, since the start of the 2023 season, 500 receiving yards. And now he's set to miss more time with an ankle injury. We don't quite know the severity of it, Kate. It doesn't sound like it's a high ankle injury, but it does sound like he's going to miss at least 2 games, maybe more. And this is kind of the problem with Christian Watson. It's like, this is a very talented dude who can't stay on the field. And even when he's on the field, it's not like he's producing at such an absurd rate that he has to be in your starting lineup every week. He is just very, very hard to trust right now. So for me, I'm out. And we're just leaving off the ADP because he's actually being drafted the highest among all these receivers outside of Jayden Reed, of course. Wide receiver 35 in the latest batch of ADP from Dynasty League Football. My guy has always been Dontavian Wicks as well. I think you saw that this week, even in a bad game against Minnesota where he dropped a couple passes, still scored 2 touchdowns, still was the most targeted receiver in this offense. And I think now with Watson being out, there's just going to be more snaps for him to play, more routes for him to run. He is the one that I want in this passing attack.
Yeah, I mean, when the cards were kind of stacked against this team and they made that comeback, you also look at the touchdown production from Dontavian Wicks, which again, not necessarily the most predictive stat, right? But like he is utilized heavily in these key situations, dating back to last season. The third highest target rate on routes run, only behind Bo Melton and Jayden Reed. Bo Melton, obviously not a fixture in the offense,
No.
but still a body there to contend with. And I mean, Dontavian Wicks, yeah, when he's on the field, kind of hard to, deny that he is somebody that Jordan Love is looking for. Like, been
What about Romeo Doubs?
what else could you possibly ask for the former 6th-round pick?
What about Romeo Doubs in this offense? Any interest at all?
I think we just kind of know. I think here's the tiebreaker for me between him and Romeo Doubs. I think Romeo Doubs, a steadying force in this offense, right, has a more permanent role. Like it kind of took that Christian Watson injury to get Dontavian Wicks more snaps. I think Romeo Doubs probably just like in general the safest option, but I'm looking like, well, what's behind door number 2? Like, I think we know at this point what Romeo Doubs is, and he's like a fringe wide receiver 3 to wide receiver 5 any given week. I think like Dontavian Wicks has top 15 upside, matchup dependent on obviously the injuries around him, etc. I just think we've already seen a higher ceiling for Dontavian Wicks here when he's given the opportunity.
Let's run through some recent trades for Dontavian Wicks in your dynasty leagues. A couple of very fascinating ones. Kate, here's a straight up trade in a non-tight end premium league. Dontavian Wicks for Kyle Pitts. RIP.
Oh, that's so bad. I mean, yeah, I guess what are you doing with Kyle Pitts at this point? You can't keep slating him out there. So like, yeah, as long as you have another body to start in the tight end position, I'll probably just roll the dice on Dontavian Wicks, which is disgusting.
This is a super flex league. Dontavian Wicks for Andy Dalton and Jacoby Myers.
Ooh.
My guess is the Dalton team or the Dalton side is trying to win now, and they're just looking for competent quarterback play.
Yeah, I think in a win now situation, I'd probably roll Dalton. I just it's hard to deny another quarterback in a super flex league.
A couple more that I want to run through quickly. Dontavian Wicks for Zamir White and Alex Pierce.
I'll take Dontavian Wicks.
Okay. Dontavian Wicks for a 2025 second-round pick.
I'll take Dontavian Wicks.
I think I'd take the pick there. Last one. Dontavian Wicks and a 2025 second-round pick for Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who we're going to talk about in a little bit.
I'll lean JSN, but I
would take JSN as well.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what his value is at right now. You're not having to trade anything obnoxiously high for him, right? Like he's still very attainable. But I do think, Kate, with this opportunity that he's going to have over the next couple of weeks with Christian Watson out, he's just going to play a lot more snaps. This does feel like an opportunity to maybe buy before the price tag goes. All right, Kate, let's transition over to the Seahawks wide receivers because D.K. Metcalf and Jaxon Smith-Njigba are basically the same price right now in your dynasty leagues. Which one would you rather have moving forward? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. I absolutely love Gametime. It's the only ticketing app that I use when I want to go to live events, which is mostly just football games. But Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier than ever before. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. My favorite part of Gametime is that you get a panoramic view of your seats so you know exactly what your view is going to look like before you buy. I love to sit in the end zones when I go to sporting events, but I don't want to be in the way of the goalpost. So I want to make sure my seats are good so I can see the entire field. Gametime helps you out there. Plus, they also have the lowest price guarantee or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We are doing some this or that or take your pick here on this episode. Okay, let's move over to the Seahawks wide receivers. DK Metcalf is off to a fantastic start this year. We actually talked about him, I believe, on yesterday's podcast. But right now in your Dynasty leagues, Metcalf and Jaxon Smith-Njigba are basically being valued the same. Which one would you rather have moving forward?
This one kind of sucks. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like really
this is great analysis.
Torn. Their value feels like it's kind of back to back right now at this point. And it is kind of the age-old question. Do you want what is handed in front of you? Do you want that known asset? Maybe it's the recency bias, or maybe it's me just trying to hedge my bets on JSN just a little bit. I'll probably say DK Metcalf right now.
Yeah, so I just made a trade where I had Metcalf and Jaxon Smith-Njigba on my roster. And the other manager that I was trading, I offered both of the receivers, and they took Metcalf. So to me, that signals that Metcalf has more value when you go to trade him. And I probably would agree. I think I would rather have Metcalf. He's just more likely to create the explosive plays right now in Seattle. And I think his role in this offense is pretty steady. Like he just knows that he's getting these targets on the outside, where JSN is more of a volume play. And we know that these volume receivers, they can be a little bit hit or miss because he's not scoring touchdowns and he's not getting a bunch of yardage. And the yards after catch is pretty low, and the yards per target are pretty low. I love that JSN is younger. I still totally believe in the talent, but I have a hard time not picking Metcalf because he's only 26 years old. If he was 28, I think this would be a different conversation. But at 26, I still think we have like 4 years of really high quality production left.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And I mean, just again, kind of looking at the overall landscape here, DK Metcalf is this bona fide wide receiver one. Maybe reading the cards again. I love JSN. I loved him as a prospect. I love the skill set that he offers. Hasn't necessarily translated to that fantasy production so far, but I guess even when you look at the role of like JSN versus DK Metcalf, like which role is generally more conducive to these boom games, it's going to be the big man on the outside who maybe probably has higher upside on a week-to-week basis. Because JSN, because of the type of usage he gets, he does need 10, 12 targets a game to really be all that useful for you. So
I agree with you on DK Metcalf's role. Like his role in this offense is just more likely to produce fantasy points, right? Because he's being targeted down the field and he's getting the end zone targets, which hasn't always been the case in Seattle's offense, but it is now with Geno Smith. I want both of these players on my team, Kate, but if I had to pick one of them, I think Metcalf is the one that I want at least over the next 2 years. I think beyond that, we could have a conversation, but over the next couple of years, I would at least rather have Metcalf.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And again, like you look at the role, I just want to point out, which I've been kind of surprised about this personally, because Tyler Lockett, another year older, hasn't necessarily looked great to this point, but JSN actually playing fewer snaps out wide than he did last year. Just 12.7% of his snaps through 4 weeks have been played on the outside. His slot rate jumped from 69% up to 87.3%, which means, again, like you're going to be on the field in just fewer situations based on personnel if you're exclusively playing out of the slot. Like if you're in two wide receiver combinations, you're not on the field, and that's fewer opportunities to run routes. That's fewer opportunities to score fantasy points. I think if we're going to pit them back to back, you probably have to go with DK Metcalf, even though I'm still a believer that JSN can be something for this team.
I've got a bunch of trades on DK Metcalf that I wanted to ask you about. Let's start with this one. DK Metcalf for Zay Flowers and Trey Benson.
Ooh.
I would rather have the Zay Flowers side.
I think I'm leaning that way as well, as a big Trey Benson fan that's really just crossing my fingers and hoping that
same.
I was right.
How about this one? How about if you're looking to acquire DK Metcalf, a 2025 first and a 2025 second?
Feels like a lot, but I actually think that's pretty fair value here in this new Ryan Grubb offense. Like a lot of passing opportunities. You know, I think that if you had asked me that last year, not in this offense and a Pete Carroll offense, I would say absolutely not. But the opportunities have increased exponentially.
I think you make that trade if you feel like your team is competitive now. Maybe you just lost Rashee Rice for the season and you're 3-1, 4-0, and the rest of your roster is ready to compete. I think I do that trade in a heartbeat. Another one, speaking of Rashee Rice, we actually had like multiple versions of this trade, but DK Metcalf for Rashee Rice in a 2025 fourth round pick.
I don't know.
I would take Metcalf there, even as the biggest Rashee Rice fan. Like the uncertainty there, like you might just not have Rashee Rice for 2 years, and in that meantime, DK Metcalf could have 2,200 yards and 20 touchdowns in the time that Rashee Rice misses.
God, I'm depressed.
I know.
Yeah, you're probably right. I feel like I'm trying to talk from both sides out of my mouth. Because I love the way the DK Metcalf is producing right now, but man, is my heart just kind of broken into a million tiny little pieces, Rashee Rice shaped fantasy point pieces.
I got one that's going to make you really excited. Okay, this is our last one. This is a non-super flex league. So just remember that, non-super flex. DK Metcalf and Jayden Daniels for Justin Herbert, Ladd McConkey, and 2 2025 first-round picks.
I'll take the Jayden Daniels, DK Metcalf side. We win in the ship this year, baby.
I like it. That's fun. All right, let's go do a more difficult situation to read. Let's talk about the Jets running backs, because obviously Breece Hall is the more valuable running back in New York. But considering their ADPs, which one would you rather have moving forward? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Go check out all of the lines for week 5. We got some amazing games this week, including my Cowboys against Kate's Steelers. We'll also have Bills Texans at 1 o'clock, which should be a fantastic game. Go check out all of the lines. You can look at the futures bets as well. FanDuel has every bet that you could imagine possible. And now you can get $200 in bonus bets with your first $5 bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go check out the new Locked On NFL show, now with 2 shows every single day. 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. That is the new Locked On NFL show with 2 shows every single day. Okay, let's talk about this last one. Breece Hall or Braelon Allen. Right now on the season, the rushing production is almost the same. It's unbelievable how similar they are. The only difference is Breece Hall is being drafted as RB2 in Dynasty, and Braelon Allen's down to like RB40. So considering their ADPs, which one would you rather have moving forward?
I'm struggling on this one, man. I am absolutely struggling because you're right. To this point, I mean, they've looked pretty similar here. Like when they're on the field, you have Braelon Allen right now averaging a higher yards per carry, a higher missed forced tackle rate, a higher first down touchdown rate, more yards after contact per attempt. Like, he has been the better player, lower stuff rate. Like, and to be fair, again, that sometimes comes down to like, how are teams game planning for Braelon Allen versus Breece Hall? Like, they can stack the box maybe against Breece Hall. They're also different types of runners, but like, even from an explosive play standpoint, Breece Hall, 3 explosive runs. That's runs of 10 or more yards through the first 4 weeks of the season. Braelon Allen also 3. So
it's incredible. This is a wild situation.
I just think that right now I'm getting the ick from all of the top running backs in all of Dynasty. Like, I don't want any of them. If I have any on my roster, I just want to break them down into a bunch of million little teeny tiny running backs that feel like they are much less significant, but like, break them down into other assets that also have a chance of hitting that maybe aren't these star power backs, but like, I just feel like every top end running back here is a liability, and this is kind of proof of this. There's not a single running back in like the top 10 rankings that I feel really good about right now. And Breece Hall kind of at the top of that list.
I agree with you, Kate. I want to break down some of these top running back assets and try to grab as many of these lower valued running backs as possible. And then once they become the next Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson, or name your running back, break them down again. Like, I think that's just the philosophy that at least you and I have when it comes to dynasty running backs. It's like, don't get attached to any of these players, because as soon as they are being valued as a top 5, top 10 dynasty running back, we're immediately flipping them for more assets. So I think Braelon Allen is the perfect type of running back to target, because it would not be that surprising if in a couple of years he's the RB1 in New York. I don't know if the Jets are going to re-sign Breece Hall to a big deal. And through 4 games, Kate, it really hasn't been all that close as to who's been the more productive running back. Maybe that'll change as the season goes on. But right now, like, if you didn't know one was a second-round pick and you didn't know the other one was the last pick in the 4th round, I'm not sure you'd be able to tell just by watching them on the field.
Yeah, it's looking pretty bleak. Now, do you have any sort of explanation for what we might be seeing in terms of the difference here? Like, maybe it does come down to just teams being more aware in their defensive schemes,
I think that's part of it.
Yeah, sure. I think that's definitely part of it. I also think part of it's Braelon Allen, really talented running back, right? He's a young back who, definitely performed, I mean, from day one at Wisconsin, just stepped onto the football field as a true freshman, super, super dominant. He's built like a tank. He's built like he's got the frame of an industrial Michelin man, a very strong industrial Michelin. Like, he's built like Mr. Clean, a little 20-year-old Mr. Clean. Like, I think he's just a really good running back too. And I do think that push comes to shove, even though Breece Hall has, the draft capital, even though Breece Hall is the superstar in the league, it's also just hard to keep talent off the field.
So here's what I think is going on with Breece Hall. To me, this screams as a running back that is used to playing behind a bad offensive line and a bad quarterback, and now he's thinking too much, right? Where Braelon Allen, young running back, doesn't know any better. He's just hitting the hole hard regardless, right? And you see Breece dancing a lot, and that's how you get games like he did last week where it's 10 carries for 4 yards, right? You're just not trusting what you're seeing at all. And teams are obviously loading up to stop Breece Hall. There's no doubt about that. But I think some of these running backs can get ruined when they play behind bad offensive lines with bad quarterbacks and stacked boxes. They just don't have any confidence. And that's what it looks like for me, that Breece Hall has just lost all of his confidence, because this does not look like the running back that we saw in 2022 as a rookie that was creating big plays all the time. This is somebody who is struggling right now, and I think he's in a funk, and I'm not sure he knows how to get out of it.
I mean, and some of that can be temporary. The brain fuzzies and it being more
not a concussion, by the way. Not a
Not a concussion, but like sometimes that decision making can kind of waver. So when you have a guy that, he's not really hesitating, he's not overthinking, like maybe that's also the difference. And that can kind of, what do they call it? The yips? Like
the yips. Yeah, you get it all the time. I mean, we've seen NBA players get it. Jason Tatum had it in the Olympics. We see pitchers all the time will get it. Golfers they get the yips all the time, and they got to rework their swing. So
does Breece Hall have the yips?
He might. I want to tell you though, I'm in a dynasty league, and one of the managers that I was talking trade with has Breece Hall. And, we're throwing out some trade offers. And as the offers are going along, I just kind of feel like this pit in my stomach. Like, do I really want to give up this much for Breece Hall? Ultimately, didn't happen. Turned around later in the day, went out and acquired Breece Hall or Braelon Allen because he's a lot cheaper. And I'm a lot more excited about it. And I don't want to give up a bunch of assets for Breece Hall, even though we know he's very talented. He's just not somebody that I'm looking to acquire right now, even at a reduced price, because I think the Breece Hall managers are getting a little worried, and I'm just not that interested in buying right now.
Yeah, again, this is kind of your warning shot against any of these top tier running backs because everybody's kind of in a similar situation, right? Even Christian McCaffrey, when he comes back, it's been clear that this Achilles injury is a workload issue, right? And they might need to be very considerate of that given the contract situation they're in with their star running back.
Yes.
Like this is not a workhorse league right now. Like you've got Derrick Henry and then there's everybody else who is left splitting carries. Like Tyler Algier, much more involved with Bijan Robinson's game than maybe we pushed too much on Arthur Smith. Maybe we blamed too much on Arthur Smith, but like, this is a league where there's a lot of players splitting work. So like, if that's going to be the case, I just want the players that will cost me a little less, that maybe the differential in terms of production isn't as great as we feel like it is in our heads right now. Maybe
this is why like somebody like Brian Robinson, who I've been targeting all summer long, is like the perfect RB2, right? He's not sexy, he's not exciting, but he's a running back in a good offense that's getting a lot of touches. And in fact, if you accidentally drafted B. Robinson in your redraft leagues this year and you went with Brian Robinson over Bijan Robinson through 4 games, you're actually happy that you made the wrong pick here. Not saying that that's going to happen the rest of the way, but there are a lot of running backs like Brian Robinson that can help you get through this season without having to spend top picks to get Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, Kyron Williams, the names.
Yep, for sure.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Go check us out on YouTube. We are free and available on all platforms. You can follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy Thursday Night Football, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.